The challenges in stakeholder engagement are many, but here we're going to concentrate on the challenges we face with role-based stakeholders, those people who have a definable role with respect to your project. So this includes your sponsor, client, and other stakeholders, sometimes referred to as internal to the project stakeholders. So a few years back, I did some work with sponsors in a large insurance company, and we asked them what they felt their role was. Well, the answer was unclear at best, and some bravely volunteered they had no idea. So one of the big problems with role-based stakeholders is, well, they're just confused about their role, or you're confused about their understanding of their role. Let's have a look at the kind of things that can go wrong. And the first one is they simply don't understand what they're supposed to do on your project. I was talking to a senior project manager in a retail organization, and she had been asked to take over a project right towards the end. And when she went in and she was talking with the business users, what she found was a group of people who were so negative about being involved in projects that her fear was that they would never take part in a project again. And what she'd found is that they had not worked on projects before, and they just didn't really have a feel for what they were supposed to do. And this had caused a lot of tension in the project and with the project manager. In this context, when you're in projects like this, maybe with people who perhaps haven't worked in projects before, particularly in the business user side, then you may have to take on a coaching or a training role to get them, first of all, before you do anything else, to buy into a common understanding of how they can contribute to the overall success of the project. Sometimes projects are just complex. Complex as to who does what and who decides what. And if you have multiple decision makers, for example, it may be very important to clarify who can make what decisions about what. Remember the RACI, the responsible, accountable, consulted and informed types of models, because in this environment, it really is worth getting out your RACI tools and re-examining them. Talking with a program manager in a large food organization, she described the transformation program and how they had made it successful. One of the things I found fascinating about this was how much time was spent on governance, how much time was spent looking at how complex decisions would be made across the organization and who could make what decisions in what circumstances. And I have no doubt that work that was done on the governance had a major factor on why this program was a success. In these complex environments, you can't let ambiguity continue, and you have to address it right up front. Here's another problem that I think we've all come across at some point. Maybe your sponsor has been assigned to the project. Maybe they don't even want to do your project. Or maybe they don't have the power to get things done with respect to your project, to make those decisions that the project requires. Maybe they keep having to go back to somebody else. I think this is particularly important as we move into more agile environments and the role of the product owner becomes increasingly important. They are the business issue resolver, but if they actually don't have the power to do this, is it going to work? And finally, these two pretty tricky ones. They have the power but not the role. This is where somebody maybe is exhibiting influence over your project, even where they don't have a role with respect to the project. They're actually not a legitimate stakeholder. I was working in a financial situation here in Cape Town on a project to roll out new printer policies across the organisation. It was a business project, but the IT director suddenly decided that he would really like to make sure that everything was cross-charged, not to him. He started to try to influence how that project was going. He had power because he was the IT director, but he didn't have a legitimate role. It wasn't really his project to make that decision. And that caused a lot of problems in the way the project went forward and a lot of rejection by the other business stakeholders who really couldn't understand why the project was taking a direction that they didn't want. Who is a legitimate stakeholder with respect to your project is a really important question for you to address. And sometimes, yes, sometimes stakeholders can have a role with respect to the project, but in the meantime, in the background, they have a personal agenda. often an agenda that they haven't necessarily shared, a covert agenda. You can recognize this when a certain individual starts to push the project in a direction which doesn't appear to be in line with the stated outcomes of the project or in line with the wants of the other stakeholders. These are the big role-based dilemmas. I suggest you might want to look out for them on your own projects, and once you've diagnosed them, then you can start to focus the actions that you might need to take.